the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friend and co-host, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this amazing industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. If you haven't already, go leave a review. Tell us how much you love the podcast or share it with a friend. That's the best way to help others discover the podcast. Subscribe to our newsletter. Go consume all of our other content. Anything you do is appreciated. We really wouldn't do this without you guys. We couldn't do this without you guys. Jimmy, how you doing this week? We're back home.
I am still not rested, Paul. I don't know about yourself, but we have a really special episode this week and a special time. First of all, it's May the 4th, so May the 4th be with you. Listeners listening to it probably on the 5th or 6th. May the 4th be with you guys also. I have my lightsaber hilt here next to me. I'm going to show it off on the
Ready
live
for tonight.
Yeah. I won't tease what it's about. You'll have to show up to the live show. And yeah, I mean, we were at PAX last week. We were at FTX Salt. It's been a busy time.
Yeah, between PAX East and the Crypto Bahamas / FTX Salt conference, it was crazy. Just back to back. And like, these are not small gatherings. These were massive productions. Incredible to see, incredible to be a part of. I think, I'm curious, which one did you enjoy more, Jimmy? Which one, and what were the takeaways from each one? Let's start with that.
They were so different, and I it's hard to know where to start. PAX had 130,000 people. It was true gaming culture at its finest. So many of you, by the way, that came and listened and showed up in person to introduce yourself to us. Incredible, and thank you for showing up, for making the trip, for saying hey, and a couple of emails beforehand giving me the heads up as well that you'd be there. That was really great to meet so many of our fans and friends in person after the lockdown. PAX was different though, right? Because it was massive. It's gaming culture. It's just kind of showing off games and costumes and really just experiencing what gamers like and do. Crypto Bahamas was more, it wasn't buttoned up because there's so many guys, right, wearing like hoodies and, crypto, that kind of culture, but it was different. It was a different crowd entirely. It was much smaller. Everyone's like, oh, how was the Bahamas? I said, I could tell you how the conference rooms were like because we worked so hard. We did spend that one day.
We did do a half day at the beach with our laptops, to be clear.
With our laptops, getting work done, getting content out for all of our listeners. They're
take away from Crypto different. Bahamas for our audience. I'm curious, did you have any?
The crypto world is really interesting. Everyone thinks, when they think gaming and the intersection of gaming and crypto, you think blockchain, play to earn type of structures, right? And that's just not the half of it. I think the takeaway for Crypto Bahamas was, cool, we found an awesome way to utilize this new technology that works very well in a financial sense, but the creativity and what it can be and will be are really just scratching the surface. And so when you hear certain gaming communities that don't appreciate NFTs or other gaming companies that are trying to add a play and earn model, again, very early iterations, very early attempts to enter the space and see what we can do here. I just think that there's so much to do that I'm still very bullish on it, despite the gaming community's early negative reaction towards it.
I really feel like at least half of the Crypto Bahamas conference was involved in gaming in some way or another. Like there is a there is definitely a recognition in the crypto community that gaming is critical to the success of their entire industry. I think I was speaking on a panel. Obviously, I think we'll be coming out with that content for everyone to watch. I think it was a very interesting panel, and my views on all of it, I think were, I don't know, controversial, shocking to that crowd, but the intersection between crypto and gaming is clearer than ever in my mind, and the excitement around that intersection is clearer than ever. And it's a great segue to we have a big announcement, which might be out by the time you listen to this. Probably will be out by the time you listen to this. I'm not gonna give it away just yet, but we've dominated in gaming. We've recently dominated in metaverse. I wouldn't be surprised if you see us dominating in crypto on the content front either. So, or also, I should say. So, interesting announcement to look forward to, and definitely exciting conference. I mean, the kinds of people we met. Special thanks also to Tim Lowe, who arranged, our panel at PAX East. Just one of the most well-connected guys in all of esports and gaming. So huge shout out and thank you to him, and thank you to all the people who showed up both for our panel at PAX East, which was stacked, and our panel at Crypto Bahamas, which was also stacked. And to the folks at Deltec Bank, I want to just say special thank you to them. Deltec, not a sponsor of the business of esports, but definitely sponsored all of the content we produced at Crypto Bahamas. So class act all the way in terms of an organization and the people, and could not have done what we did at Crypto Bahamas without them. So definitely go check them out. Bank based in the Bahamas and very much crypto focused. So Jimmy, we got an amazing guest this week. I don't want to take too much more time. I know we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this conference in other content that we're going to be putting out. So there's just so much Crypto Bahamas content and PAX content that you guys will look forward to, I hope. And let's jump into today's episode, because we do have an absolutely, absolutely amazing guest. We have none other than Sam Speaker. Sam is the CEO and founder of GamerPod, maybe one of the coolest hardware, call it gaming hardware, for lack of a better word here, companies that I've seen in a while. I'll let Sam talk about what they're doing. Sam, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
What's up, guys? You got me a little excited talking about PAX East and then crypto. I went from here and just kept going up.
It was a crazy week and a half, Sam. But for our listeners who don't know about you, about GamerPod, would love a little bit of your story, how you got into gaming, why you got into it, and what you guys are doing at GamerPod, because I do think it's so unique. It's so cool. Would love for you to tell our viewers about it.
Yeah, so just to kind of give you an overview of what the product is, GamerPod is the first ever dedicated live streaming and content creation micro studio. It's 4 feet by 4 feet and takes up a tiny footprint, and someone can enter in. There's a full PC, dual monitors, and you can really equip it with whatever you need to create the content you're looking to create, whether it's a microphone, webcam, or just game. So that's GamerPod. You guys want me to get into my background a little bit?
Yeah, would love your background, how you got into doing this, why you got into doing this, just some of your story.
It's a long story. I started out in high school playing some competitive Halo 3, which you guys have been around. You know how big Halo 3 was. Pretty much everyone wanted to be a competitive Halo 3 player. Was about to go to MLG Anaheim at the time. This was back in 2009, maybe. And my parents, not knowing how big gaming and esports is, they urged me to go to my soccer tournament instead that weekend. So it ended up working out. Got a scholarship to go to Temple University and play Division I soccer. And while I was there, my first day at preseason camp, I met my now business partner, Dalton Carroll. And we ended up living together all 4 years. We like to think we went to school and majored in gaming in the dorm rooms rather than accounting and audio engineering for Dalton, which were our actual majors. So, like I said, I went into accounting after college. I went and worked for a Big Four accounting firm. Dalton went a much more exciting route, and he ended up at Milk Boy Studios in Philadelphia, where he was recording artists like Nicki Minaj and Meek Mill and all these big artists. I was over there, looking at Excel documents and crunching the numbers. So, so that we kind of broke apart a little bit. And then I moved out to Los Angeles to join a startup kind of on a whim. And at that time, I decided, I'm lonely in Los Angeles, as crazy as that sounds. Maybe I should start right. Maybe I should start my streaming career. So, I went on to, I think it was I forget which website, one of the many, what do I have here? An iBuyPower now. It was probably iBuyPower. Went on their website, started building a PC, got to the end, and I saw the PC was like $3,000. And I was like, Jesus, how does anyone afford to get into this? So I kind of put that on the back burner. And then after moving back east, I was at a consulting firm back in accounting and was in between projects and was just on IGN at, that was kind of the big one at that time, still pretty big. But and I saw an article about Ninja's $20,000 streaming studio. And I just kept thinking, this is getting out of hand. How are kids that are watching Ninja stream, looking at him the same way young basketball players look at LeBron? And how do they then go and try to pursue live streaming? Coincidentally, I jumped from that website onto TechCrunch and was reading about these office phone booths that are starting to pop up in open workspace working environments. I was like, oh shit, what if we slap these two together and then we can put these out in the public and let kids use them? I mean, it seemed to be a great idea. So I hit up Dalton and told him about my idea, and Dalton was like, dude, we got to do this. He was in the midst of purchasing a PC and couldn't afford it, obviously, with the price of PCs as they're going through the roofs. So we decided to go in his garage and start building out our first GamerPod unit, which was rough. To say the least, it was rough. But we like to say the best companies were started in a garage, and that's where we built the first GamerPod unit.
I'm curious, Sam, why rough? And while you're talking about this, for those of you listening, unfortunately, it's a little bit hard to describe. It does look like a sort of an enlarged phone booth set up for gaming and streaming. I will put it up here while you're answering this question, though. What is what was so tough in the beginning? What was that major challenge?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so like I said, I come from an accounting background. I used to build. I did a little bit of skateboarding back in the day. So I used to build some really rough plywood ramps out in my garage at the time, and then put them out in our driveway and skate them. So the whole thing was really built by plywood, and luckily we had some power tools and we're able to cut up some sheet metal, which there's a whole story about. Well, it's actually not that long of a story. Dalton was cutting some sheet metal and some shrapnel flew about 30 feet, hit the ceiling, came down, hit me right in the chest.
Oh my God.
Ripped my shirt. I thought I was dead. But obviously I'm still here right now. But yeah, I mean, it was rough, but I think, you're balling on a budget. You're both working full-time jobs, doing this on the weekend. And, we were trying to build out a proof of concept to see if this really makes sense. And we threw my iBuyPower PC in there that I bought a couple of years prior, and we were like, oh shit, this is going to work. So
Sam, I see 3 potential business models here, and I want to sort of dive in.
Yeah.
Who is the target customer for GamerPod, right? That's the crux of the question here.
Yeah.
And I see 3 sort of options, and let me lay them out the way I see them, and maybe you can jump in here. Option 1 is sort of crazy people like me who, I just want to put this in my house somewhere or at my office somewhere because, I want everything that's cool and that's gaming related. And it sort of, it's this call it more high end gaming customer. I see that as sort of one potential path. The second is you open like locations where you put 50 of these in them, and it's sort of like a LAN center on steroids.
Sure.
And you charge people, I guess, by the hour to use them. And the third is you put these sort of the way the ATM business model works, which is like, your local 7-Eleven. I'm exaggerating to make a point. Puts one of these in their store, and there's a rev share with the 7-Eleven or something like that, where people who come and play for a few hours, 7-Eleven gets the foot traffic and maybe a little bit of revenue, and you keep the bulk of it. Now, I don't know if I've missed the mark, and none of these three are where you're headed. But how are you thinking about the business side of GamerPod?
Yeah, and Paul, I kind of wish you were some of the investors that we've pitched to, because you're already like 80% of the way there on what our business model looks like, and I'm still trying to explain to them what an Xbox controller is and why it's in certain games it's better than M&K. But I think you're spot on a lot of these. Kind of the first one you touched on, which would be you, the experienced gamer that's super dedicated and hardcore. That's not really our focus right now. I think we're working internally on developing a product just for that individual. It will likely be a lot lighter. Our units are 750 pounds,
Wow.
and take some effort to install. But we're working on a unit that's a lower price point, a little less weight, and a little less like intruding on someone's space for your home. Now, if the office behind you, we definitely are targeting offices like that, where this can be utilized as a podcasting room or just a creative environment where someone can really isolate themselves from the craziness that is like the open workspace. So, you have the open workspace office pod is a pretty saturated market at this point, but none of them come integrated with any technology beyond just lighting and some very minor ventilation. Our units were very specific towards the content creation office. So someone like you that's creating podcast or doing video content or vlogging, our units have ventilation for the user and then separate ventilation for the PC itself. You guys are aware of how much heat is created. It's insane. You really start to learn whenever you're enclosed with the PC, which our first unit was all in the space. It got to like 110 degrees in there. It was nuts. But yeah, I think, we're working on a product that is going to be direct to consumer. But right now we're, focused elsewhere in offices, universities, which we can talk more about that. That's turned into what we're seeing as one of our biggest opportunities. Your second one was like an esports center, right? So
yep.
We have our first unit, we ended up placing in TAP Esports Center in Philadelphia, which is this really cool, like, dungeon sounds bad, but it's in a basement in Chinatown, and you kind of walk in, you're transported.
It
sounds
not
terrible,
the best
but
description.
It's so cool. If you walked in the place, you would be like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but this is cool. So, but they were really awesome. They let us place the unit and collect some data. And their patrons really loved it. They had kids spending 6-7 hours in there. They're able to stream on a high-end PC for $4 an hour rather than going out and dropping several $1,000s. And we had, some really dedicated users that it was pretty awesome to see. We would tune in to see their streams and stuff. It was the whole thing. But so what we're doing is we're placing like 1 or 2 units in esports centers as opposed to what you suggested, which is having a whole facility dedicated to a bunch of gamer pods. And then I guess the third one that you mentioned is what we call a remote access unit, which, you would walk up to it. It would be, we think an airport, or like you said, a 7-Eleven. We would think maybe more a Target or inside of a mall.
Yep.
But you walk up, you scan your card, the door unlocks, and you can start streaming. So that's something we're working on. We're working with kind of a big corporate partner, trying to work out the details on that to get them on board. And we're a startup, so money's tight. We could always use the help there.
Sam, first, I just want to say major kudos to just having a dream and a vision and literally going into the garage and making it happen.
Thanks, man.
We have a lot of listeners here on the show that always ask, how do you get started? What can I do? And you do it, right? Like you and Dalton. First question for me, and I definitely want to get into the schools that you're working with and some of the application and what that business model looks like. But before we get off topic as to the actual design, or rather before we leave that topic of the design itself, and I understand this is definitely a question for Dalton, but you as the representative of the company, I'm sure have more than enough info for us on this. The acoustics, the engineering, the thought, because, again, Paul put it up here for those watching, for those listening, GAMRPOD.com. Beautiful, beautiful design, glass panels on the side, sleek, sharp corners. Doesn't sound anything like this plywood and steel thing in your garage, which, like you said, was hot and probably you couldn't hear any, So I'm just curious what you can share in terms of, like you had mentioned, dual ventilation, acoustics, the system. Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the product itself, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, our design story is a pretty crazy one. Obviously we started the company in 2019. When I say started the company, we built the first unit in our garage, and then incorporated in late 2019. And from that point, we realized we need to either design and manufacture a soundproof environment that's more professional and can withstand a commercial setting, or we need to outsource it and find someone that can manufacture at least the base, the shell, so to speak. So we did what a lot of young companies do that are trying to manufacture product. We went to Alibaba and started searching soundproof booths being manufactured in Asia. And COVID hit 4 months later, right after we put our deposit down on a manufacturer out there. And it was a mess. Honorable Jimmy Baratta, we had to threaten, claim that we were going to start a legal suit, which, as you're well aware, is nearly impossible as someone in the U.S. working with someone in the backwoods of China.
I'm sure they said, bring it on. Yeah,
they did, until I was, persistent. And I think, this persistence that, of going in our garage and building the unit, and then the persistence in trying to find a manufacturer. I have no experience finding manufacturers, but going over China. I did not go to China, although I had planned to at the time. But searching in China and working with people overseas and being persistent and demanding answers, I think are all important lessons to learn for anyone getting started or anything. But anyway, we ended up getting some of our money back, and I started exploring manufacturers in the U.S., anywhere from just sheet metal workers to furniture makers and furniture designers to other people manufacturing soundproof booths, as well as Dalton had some contacts within the audio engineering, music recording space, which you would think makes a ton of sense. But, it's not easy to navigate that market, especially if you don't have an existing network and you don't have an engineering background and know exactly what you're looking for. So we had hundreds of conversations with different manufacturers, and we ended up working, we found a company, a very niche soundproof booth manufacturer up in Canada, and I'm happy to disclose their name. It's called 126 Design. They are incredible to work with. If anyone's ever looking for help in either design or making a product, I'll be the first to recommend these guys. go ahead and try to make another GamerPod. It's not that easy, but these guys had experience with building out a custom soundproof booth. They invented their product, which is called Loop. It's like a mid-century modern soundproof booth for like a really, classy but eclectic office environment. Really cool, but also not integrated with any technology. And these guys, it's a very small team. We really didn't want to work with any big corporation that would come in and undercut us and, take our idea and try to run with it. So we signed a contract with those guys to help us design the unit, and then obviously, make it into manufacturing blueprints and manufacture. So we kind of told them, we showed them what we built in the garage, which was a mess and kind of a hard starting point. But then they were awesome. We gave them all the features we were looking to incorporate, and we gave them kind of the feel that we were looking to, for the units to have, and the environment that the user was to experience once they entered. And they kind of took our notes and our pictures of our existing unit and just some inspiration photos that we pulled off the internet of feels that we liked. And they gave us a bunch of different concepts, and then we picked one and kind of branched off, made a shit ton of iterations, and that's how we ended up at our design.
Sam, what's the, I don't know if you can say, but what's the target price of one GamerPod?
Yeah, so our manufacturing price we targeted was $5,000, and we didn't end up hitting it, especially at the low quantity. Obviously we couldn't go and order 100 of these, which a volume play in this perspective with all the different components, as you guys would know, would seriously reduce the price. But the number that we were throwing out there in the market as we were trying to manufacture these was $5,000.
And it's the idea that they ship fully assembled, or they have to be assembled on site?
Yeah, so initially we wanted them to be fully assembled, but our kind of first target market was the esports center, LAN center. And as you guys know, a lot of these are in strip malls or a basement in the city, and they don't have loading docks. They don't have double doors to load through. So we ended up going with a flat pack model, which also kind of helped them from a shipping perspective, reduce the cost of shipping a little bit. But it adds that, it's kind of this give or take. It adds that annoyance of trying to assemble the units.
And what did you learn from that first, because you mentioned you were installed right in this LAN center. Maybe talk about some of the things you learned from that installation, good or bad. What were some of the findings there?
Well, the first one was definitely measure the space before you go to install a unit. We ended up having, it's a tight space for them. So we ended up having to try out a couple different locations within their shop until we found a space that it's in a basement. So there's piping and everything like that. So we had to avoid all that stuff. What else did I learn?
In terms of maybe usage, in terms of, what the reaction to it was. I don't know what kind of data you were collecting specifically, but curious to what the findings were.
Yeah, I think user experience is huge. Right now, there isn't software that exists in the market that you can just go and click and start streaming, and it recognizes, your webcam and your mic and all that stuff. And generally, this is all these kids are very familiar with gaming, right? But they're not super familiar with OBS software, and setting up all the peripherals and balancing their sound and all that good stuff. So it really ended up being an exercise in education. We found ourselves there a lot, helping the users out, and that's something that we learned is, hey, maybe there's more opportunity here to develop something that is just kind of a sit down and click go type of scenario. So that was probably the biggest thing. And then, like I said, at that point, we had the PC still inside the unit, and now kids would come out of that unit drenched. So we had to figure out a solution for that.
User experience obviously being so important to future iterations of the product, as well as what the end consumer is going to look like, because, right. So you had mentioned earlier schools, you're talking about this basement in Chinatown and other land centers. So where are you guys finding success, and what are the users saying now that you have a highly polished and finished product versus the earlier stages of learnings?
Yeah, it's interesting. We thought we would put this unit out there and it would just be like, okay, it's clean. We're done. We think we hit everything. That really hasn't been the case. We've now placed 5 units since we finished our first round manufacturing of the new of the version that you guys see at the end of February. And it takes some time to ship these from Canada, especially with the shipping strikes that were occurring up there the last couple months. But nevertheless, we found some issues with installing the units and assembling the units. These are obviously, we like to compare them to assembling, an IKEA dresser, which can take 5 or 6 hours. But what we didn't consider is, these are really heavy. The glass, it's, 1/4-inch thick glass. Those things weigh 100+ pounds and they're awkward. So we found that it wasn't quite as easy to install as we had originally planned. So that was like the one big thing that we found so far. And then, obviously you have complaints from customers, no matter how successful your business is. But, we did have some questions around the level of soundproofing in the units. And quite frankly, our units will reduce sound up to 20 decibels, which you guys being in the, the sound content space, that's pretty damn significant. So a lot of it, again, is like educating the customer. It's a new product in a brand new market. We didn't iterate off of anything else. We're the first to be doing this. We're the only ones to be doing this. And, being able to educate the customer on soundproofing and what that means. It doesn't mean you're in a sound vacuum, right? You're not going up into space. And for you to reduce sound, there has to be outside sound. So someone might say, hey, I'm in a quiet room. Sam's inside the unit and I'm standing outside of, Scott or whoever is outside of the unit and he can hear me talking. And I'm like, well, you're in a completely soundless environment. Of course you're going to hear it. But, we sent our prototype unit of this model. We sent it to the esports awards back in October of last year. And it was sitting in the the VIP activation space. And we had people going in and playing, I forget, I played a game of like Slither.io or something just to like demonstrate the soundproofing. And it was incredibly loud outside of the unit. And it just felt like, at that time, it felt like you were walking into a vacuum. Because you guys know, you need the sound outside for it to reduce any sound. If there's no sound, what are you going to reduce? Right?
Sam, where do you think, it sounds like you've been very focused on North America, the US. Are there global markets that you're looking at where you think there may be huge opportunity for a product specifically like GamerPod? Like, are there markets that you have in mind that you think are going to be very target rich for you guys?
Yeah, I think, Asia, obviously they have a massive gaming culture out there. And the interesting thing there is, I don't think the streaming numbers are quite as, like, from a ratio, the streamers to gamers isn't quite as high as it is in North America. Now, if you look at Europe, that's kind of what our next market that we're looking to capture. It's a little bit more of a sophisticated. It's not like the right word, but it just makes a lot more sense for us. The facilities that they're building make a lot more sense to house our units. And then the airports and whatnot, when we start to launch our remote access model, we think they'll be a lot more receptive to housing our units.
The remote access model is interesting, especially for a place like China these days, right? They could lock the doors after a certain hour. Either lock the kids out or lock them in after they shouldn't be playing. But the airport's interesting. I definitely can see that. Malls, I think, very interesting, right? Because malls always struggle for foot traffic, anything that drives that.
And they're looking to gaming right now. Malls are really looking into gaming. I mean, we've been approached, and like, I don't know how much you guys have dove into that, but they're reaching out to esports centers and LAN centers, trying to get them to, to open shops. They're paying them to use the space. It was crazy for me to hear.
So we know you're a startup, Sam, but obviously you're all over the place already. Esports Awards is awesome to demonstrate in front of a community that gets it. Where can we go today and see this? Are you in any airports currently? I know you had mentioned that that's a spot that you want to capture. Where can our listeners go today and try you guys out in real life?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of few and far between right now, given we just launched this new version. We do have a unit at Belong Esports Center in Tennessee, and we're looking to get more units launched across their facilities. They have big plans to open, hundreds of esports centers across the country. So they've been really great partners so far, and we see a long relationship with those guys. Another unit we have that's being sent out right now is to eBash, which is in Indiana, another esports center. We have a unit with a big corporate partner who I can't necessarily mention right now. They are public, so I got to kind of stay away from that. And then we have two units that are kind of our proof of concept in the university setting that have had great reception. And they're at Temple University, which is my alma mater. So they've been super supportive in letting us try out units there. And those are being used kind of in a different capacity. They're outside of their esports center, which they have a big esports program, but they're sitting in their, several thousand computer lab right at the entrance. And they're being used for, not only gaming, but maybe even more so for attending online classes and doing online presentations, given there's that big shift away from in-person schooling.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what is the difference in the pitch to the universities, right? Does this replace, or is this sort of a solution for schools looking to put esports facilities in, and maybe it's a lower cost solution, or is this in addition to whatever current esports facilities they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of the above, which, we have been approached to put these in esports facilities now. I think universities are at very different stages across the board of getting on board with esports and gaming. You have some like Temple who have a dedicated computer lab for esports, or Harrisburg University, just to name a few, in Pennsylvania. And then you have universities that do not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So for the universities that are, all on board for esports, yeah, we are looking to place these in their actual esports facilities, because we know those students are looking for a place to do their live streaming. Given, live streaming and content creation is a viable career path at this point, which many people are in denial, but it is incredibly viable. You guys know how much XQC makes, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stats. I think they polled a bunch of high school students in the U.S., or I think it was all in the U.S., and the number one career choice, like in 2022, was the majority want to be YouTubers. That's like the number one career choice. So I definitely see that. Sam, what is the thing that keeps you up at night with the business? Like, what is the biggest challenge for you going forward?
What keeps me up at night? I think the fact that we're probably a few years ahead of the market with our product. I don't think the product or the market is necessarily in a maturity level that it can, one, afford our product, and two, it hasn't quite built the customer base that we would need to really sustain the profit levels that we would like to sustain. So right now it's a matter of enduring, not hitting the sales targets that we'd really like to be hitting at this point, especially with the additional product iterations that we're looking to develop. And I'm kind of an inventor at this point, is what I consider myself in the space. So we have probably 3 or 4 other products that we're just chomping at the bit to really flesh out and launch across the industry.
Are these products that are extensions or added on services to GamerPod, or are these separate businesses? Because this is the question I wanted to ask was, as a startup and as you mentioned, being ahead of the market, what are the mechanisms that you're employing to extend your burn to keep yourselves in business longer and find that right timing? And part of that I was going to ask was, do you have adjacent services or products? I love that you're already thinking that way. What can you share about that?
Yeah, we're working with a company to develop that software that I spoke of earlier, which is, one, making our units remote access where we can place them. And, it's a lot easier for us to convince a facility to place those units because they don't have to drop, $8,000, $9,000 for one or two of our units. That we can just say, hey, we'll do a revenue share model with a small security deposit and, we'll maintain the software and the hardware within the unit. So that's kind of how we see, the long play for our GamerPod units as they exist now. Beyond that, we have a couple iterations of the product. One being a unit that makes a lot more sense direct to consumer. So if Paul wanted to buy a unit, we're working on a product where you can convert your existing desk into a more soundproof space. Especially with people working from home, especially in the content creation space, and getting older and starting families, and the cost of housing going up, and moving people into renting and being in apartments. Space is a commodity at this point. So turning existing space into a more soundproof environment, we think, is a massive opportunity. And then beyond that, we're thinking of a few products that additionally allow for the existing streamer to be on the go. Right now, they're trapped to their gaming station, or if they're related to an org like 100 Thieves, of course, if they're in LA, they can use their compound. But what if they're in Chicago? What if they're in an even smaller town? So we're working on a product that allows them to bring their stuff with them, their peripherals, their PC, and it pops up into a more soundproofing environment. And then beyond that, just other soundproofing related products. I mean, we think that there's no one in the market right now that's really owning the soundproofing within the gaming community or the gaming industry. So, we're working on developing some products to make that more accessible.
Yeah, there's a ton of ways you could innovate, both on the product side, but also business model, right? Like making it a club so you can use any GamerPod anywhere in the world, or things like that. Like I see a lot of directions you can take this.
Yeah.
Guys, this time has flown by here. I want to make sure we get in everyone's favorite new segment, which is Judge Jimmy Burrata's cross-examination here. For those of you who are new, what basically this is Jimmy's going to ask a few questions, rapid fire style. Sam's going to give us quick answers. And the idea is to get to know our guest a little bit better, who they are as people and as gamers. So Judge Jimmy, take it away.
All right, Sam, no pressure here. Quick and easy. First question, what is your favorite game, snack, or drink?
Well, I eat a lot of protein bars at this point, so I don't like to step away from the PC or from my Xbox. So I usually reach to my right and grab usually a Gatorade protein bar, which if you haven't had those, they're fire.
Interesting.
Have to
healthy. Sounds healthy.
they're pretty sugary.
We talked a good amount about, your D1 soccer scholarship, right, to Temple. If you could go back to school, knowing what you know now and doing what you do now, what class or major would you pursue?
Yeah, I probably would have gotten into computer science or advertising and marketing. I think those provide you with some invaluable skills, whether you go the business route or, specifically into those fields.
I almost forgot my bell. I love that answer. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Next question. What's your favorite video game of all time?
Of all time?
If it's easier,
if we're talking number of hours that I've played, then easily Halo 3. It was kind of it was a problem. Yeah, that's probably what I'd go with Halo 3.
You'd call that the greatest game ever?
I probably would not call it the greatest game ever.
Just your favorite game.
It's pretty awesome, though.
Okay.
I think a lot of our listeners have a lot of hours spent on that one as well. What about what you're currently playing?
I play too much Apex, and I'm
Nice.
still hanging out on Rocket League. I was a little late to the party on Rocket League, but damn, the low barrier to entry and the high skill ceiling just makes that game so addicting.
Let's see. We'll get you one more to get out of here. You mentioned XQC. Obviously, you build a product for creators. Who's your favorite creator to watch, or your favorite esports org or team?
That's really difficult because I watch a lot of XQC. It's really hard to go away from XQC.
I mean, he is really good.
Someone that I've kind of discovered, well, I guess, the Apex community knows him, but this guy called Mandy, Mande. He's on a team called Scars. They're in Europe, but I like to think of him as kind of a mini XQC, maybe the next one to come up. So mark my words there.
Good answer.
Gonna have to check him out. Sam. That's all the questions on the cross. So thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys having me.
Sam, for our listeners, how can they find you, follow you, keep up to date with what GamerPod's doing? Like, where do you want to be found or followed?
I mean, first check out our website, gamerpod.com. That's GAMRPOD.com. You can see our current product. As far as social media goes, you can kind of bust Dalton's balls on not posting enough, but you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at GamerPod.
Very cool. I always love innovation in places where you don't see a lot of innovation. And so, I really hope this is a huge success. I kind of want one for my house, my office. So we'll have to figure that one out.
We'll see what we can do.
But love what you guys are doing. Definitely everyone should go check it out. Gamerpod.com. And that's GAMRpod.com. That takes us to the end of this week's episode, guys. Just a couple of reminders. We do a live stream every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's a lot of fun. It's all the industry news from the week, all the esports and gaming news from the week. We cover it live. We do it with a bigger cast. We take your questions. You can get in our faces. You can challenge us. It's a lot of fun. Every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We stream it everywhere. YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch. I mean, Trovo, for God's sakes. Like, it's literally streamed everywhere. And also make sure to follow us everywhere you get our content. You can find Business of Esports content on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Our TikTok's been doing very well these days, so definitely go follow all our content there. And let us know how much you love the podcast, guys. Don't forget to go leave that 5-star rating and review. Sam, thank you so much. Jimmy, thank you as always. Guys, thank you all for listening. Don't forget, the future is fun. We'll see you next week.